voting day in a special congressional election that carries implications far beyond the district boundaries in Georgia.
Otto Warmbier has just passed away. He spent a year and a half in North Korea. A lot of bad things happened.
There was murder committed here by the North Koreans.
They don't put people in comas, they put people in coffins.
President and his agenda, what is getting done legislatively? What can the White House actually do? Well, in many cases, sit and watch. They're considering not taking August off.
Fox News has learned that Sean Spicer, the press secretary, will be getting a new position at the White House. It really is a reflection of the tornadic flow of information here.
A Senate floor showdown overnight. Democrats seizing control of the floor, demanding Republicans hold a hearing on the health care bill.
Leftist rage reaches now an all-time high.
I'm just saying hunt Republicans instead of Democrats.
You know what? You're an unbalanced person, and I have to say, it's distressing that more Democrats haven't disavowed you.
Shows very little discretion.
Well, Mr. Devine is the Democratic strategist who, after what happened down in Washington, D.C., actually Alexandria, Virginia, had the hashtag Hunt Republican Congressman.
Yeah, he thought that was responsible.
Just a little crazy.
The guy who does his interviews with his glasses on top of his head?
Right. It happens sometimes.
He's a very casual guy.
I don't know where I put him. Let me check the monitor.
We're going to talk a little bit about some, given the harsh rhetoric, some of the unusual things that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren said last night on a Facebook Live telecast. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But in the meantime, our lead story, Otto Warmbier, the 22-year-old from the University of Virginia, has died.
Wow, gosh, this story is, we interviewed his parents when they hadn't heard from him in 17, 18 months. He's in North Korea traveling on a college trip, tries to take a propaganda poster and is thrown in prison. And apparently they beat him to death. He comes back to the U.S. in a coma, in a vegetative state, and died yesterday at 2:20 p.m.
This outlaw regime has to be unearthed, stopped, and this leader's got to be taken out. But the president might have the same feelings, but he did not express that yesterday. He was measured and he was solemn. Listen.
I just wanted to pass on word that Otto Warmbier has just passed away. He spent a year and a half in North Korea. A lot of bad things happened, but at least we got him home to be with his parents, where they were so happy to see him, even though he was in very tough condition, but he just passed away a little while ago. It's a brutal regime, and we'll be able to handle it.
The big question is, what did the North Koreans do to him? They said he had extensive loss of brain tissue in all regions of his brain. You know, they also said, according to the North Koreans, he had a combination of botulism and he took some sleeping pills. Botulism can be treated, and an overdose can be reversed. Clearly what was going on is the North Koreans did not want him to die in their custody, so they returned him. He had been... Let's not kid ourselves. He wasn't just a prisoner. He was a hostage. So says one of Martha's guests last night. Listen.
This kid was never a prisoner. He was a hostage. He was a bargaining chip, and that's how they hold anyone who's in North Korea, because they're going to get something out of them. When they captured that Ling reporter, they had Bill Clinton get on a plane to Pyongyang, and he bowed down and kissed Kim Jong-il's ring, and then Kim Jong-il could say to North Korean people, look, I make American presidents bow down before me. So they're very logical in their depravity. I don't know if this is going to change at all. We've known they've kidnapped people for many, many years, and people have complained, and they have nuclear weapons, and they're defiant, and there's no easy answer when you're dealing with a bunch of gangsters who are glad to kill their own.
Knowing what we know now, it's hard to watch that video. He's in there crying, pleading for them to let him go. He tried to take a poster. Give me a break. It was midnight on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, we're not even sure he did.
I know, exactly. Tried to take this propaganda poster, and that's how they treat him. You know, he's crying, thinking, they're going to, this is a communist country. What are they going to do to me?
By the way, what kind of tour sends you to North Korea? And why'd you sign up for it?
Well, now they're not.
I certainly don't blame him for doing it, but I just can't believe there's even a way to get there if you're not Dennis Rodman.
Well, he was studying in China, and then there was apparently this tour company that said, hey, we'll give you a tour, a 5-day tour of North Korea. You want to go? And he signed up for it.
Right. General Jack Keane says our patience with China is going to run out here. If China doesn't get to some noticeable results, if they don't change the behavior of this regime, our major diplomatic and economic sanctions is coming through China's, through there. So to get North Korea's attention, we'll have to sanction China, which of course has ramifications.
What's scary about this is it could happen to any of our children. There's so many kids that travel abroad.
I don't let my kids go to North Korea.
No, I know. But, I mean, you just think about this kid is so innocent. He didn't do anything wrong. He's just mischievous at 22 years old. But I think about my daughter. If she came home in a vegetative state, you know, you work so hard to give your kids the best life. They probably worked really hard to give him the money to go over to travel abroad and learn. And this is how he comes home. This is what they do to him. Well, we need to fight back.
Ainsley, keep in mind there are 3 other hostages being held by North Korea
and Rex
right
Tillerson
now.
saying we need to get them back, and then hopefully we'll fight back after that.
Well, what is the penalty? We have 3 hostages, Americans, in North Korea custody right now. We asked you what the president and his administration should do. Kevin responded on Twitter, writing, "Hit them with every travel restraint and economic sanction we can possibly hit them with."
Susan on Facebook says, first, make sure all others are brought home safely, then send in the Navy SEALs and let them have a field day. Charge Kim Jong-un with a criminal war.
Evidently, he lives a very paranoid life. He now travels in incognito. He feels as though there is hits on him. He does think as though he's going to be taken out at any moment. So he's like many leaders, male oppressive leaders, feels as though he's going to have hell to pay for what he's done to his country.
You know what? He's got to worry about the Americans. He's got to worry about the Chinese as well. Jeffrey emailed, "Mr. President, the time has come to deal with North Korea. Release the mad dog."
And meanwhile, it's not easy dealing with South Korea at this moment. They have a new leader there that wants to be closer to China than us, perhaps. And he says, oh, that THAAD missile system, we're going to do more environmental tests before we set up the missile protection system that we were giving them for $1 billion and setting up for free. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge in the area.
I'm with Congressman Royce. I think we should ban anyone from going to North Korea. Why anyone would want to go there is beyond me. But we're talking about banning people from Cuba. North Korea, we need to ban people from going there to keep people safe, because this is what they're going to do with someone who just barely does something wrong in North Korea. Imagine if you really committed a crime there.
So what do you think? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. In the meantime, we mentioned at the top of this hour, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren showed up on Facebook Live last night. They had some interesting things. Resist, clearly, the message. But given the atmospherics after the congressional baseball shooting, the consensus in Washington and around the political world is to tone down the rhetoric. The big question is, for Democrats, where is the line? What if somebody said, act in an unprecedented way or fight back in every way, while the other side is harming millions of people? Well, that's what Bernie said last night.
We got to stand up and fight back. We have got to be involved in the political process in a way that we have never been before, because what is happening now in Washington is unprecedented. You have got to, Mary, act in an unprecedented way. Think big.
Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are the face and in front for the Democratic Party. On some level, Republicans rejoice because everything they back fails. She's even going to be a fight for re-election. Bernie Sanders supports a candidate. They go nowhere. People like the idea of Bernie Sanders, but when they hear his ideas, they realize they're impractical, and there's a reason why he has not accomplished anything as a congressman or a senator.
Well, just the fact that he says, while the other side is harming millions of people, that's the kind of harsh rhetoric that, you know, where's that leading?
Yeah, I mean, you would think that after someone shot congressional baseball, GOP congressman who were just practicing baseball, and the guy who did it in the name of Bernie Sanders, essentially, you would think they would be radioactive to do anything to bring up any type of aggressive language, but clearly he's not taking that to heart.
Good point. Yeah, how many days has it been? Hasn't even been a week.
Right. Not a week.
Tomorrow is a week.
1 week. All right, it is 10 minutes after the top of the hour here in New York City. And Jillian takes us right now, I believe, down to where? Georgia?
Yep, that's right. Good morning to you guys. Let's begin with this Fox News alert right now. The polls are open in Georgia. Voters making their pick in the high-stakes special election. Republican Karen Handel facing Democrat Jon Ossoff for the congressional seat left vacant by Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price. President Trump weighing in on Twitter this morning, you can see right here, saying, quote, Karen Handel for Congress. She will fight for lower taxes, great health care, strong security, a hard worker who will never give up. Vote today. He also added, quote, Democrat Jon Ossoff, who wants to raise your taxes to the highest level and is weak on crime and security, doesn't even live in district. Now, Republican candidate Karen Handel will join us live on Fox and Friends in the next hour, so stay tuned for that. The U.S. Coast Guard is questioning the crew on board the cargo ship that slammed into a U.S. Navy destroyer. They will also interview the USS Fitzgerald crew and gather electronic data and ship tracking information from both vessels. Japan's Coast Guard is investigating why it took nearly an hour to report the collision that left 7 American sailors dead. A Senate showdown overnight. Democrats seizing control of the floor, demanding Republicans hold a hearing on the health care bill.
Republicans won't relent and debate their health care bill in the open for the American people to see. They shouldn't expect business as usual.
The talkathon ending just after midnight. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi taking it one step further, saying, quote, Trump care's assault on seniors and working families is indefensible, and Republicans on both sides of the Capitol know it. And how about this? Earth may no longer be one of a kind. NASA announcing the discovery of 219 new suspected planets outside our solar system. The figure includes 10 that are just like Earth. The space agency says they are rocky like Earth, and they exist in their solar system's Goldilocks zone, which means they're neither too hot nor too cold for liquid water to exist. I don't know about you guys. I find that stuff fascinating. I'm not sure, but I can do some research and get back to you.
Well, they do have Starbucks, so
Really?
Everyone has Starbucks.
So they have money over there, because you can't go into Starbucks unless you have some type of money.
They probably have some advanced form of currency.
Right.
Thanks, Julian.
See about real estate.
219 other planets, just like Earth. Wow.
I mean, but you have to go with the scientists say. We don't have their telescopes, so we're just going on their word that they have all this.
So you're saying...
Because they could be making stuff up every day. Hey, I have an idea. Let's just say we found a planet exactly like Earth. It's rocky with cable and Starbucks.
Okay, Brian Kilmeade, hashtag fake planet.
I'm just saying there's a chance. Meanwhile, straight ahead. He wants to run for president in 2020, and I guess you could call this laying the groundwork. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says illegals are welcome in his state, but conservatives, forget about it.
And what happens when summer break interferes with Congress doing its job? Should they stay at work? Congressman David Kutzhoff is here next. Come on in, Congressman.
Good morning. How are you?
They were elected to pass the president's agenda, but the GOP divisions has reforms at a standstill, and Democrats not getting along. And now some lawmakers propose skipping their August recess to get some work done. Is this a good idea? Here to weigh in, GOP Congressman, House Financial Services Committee member David Kutzhoff. Congressman, you say don't rush to stick around in August. At what point, what will you like to see done that would allow you with a clear conscience to take off in August?
You know, I'd like to see us get health care done. So we need to see it come back from the Senate. We know that Leader McConnell has said that he expects that we'll have it back, or they'll pass it in the Senate by July the 4th. If they do pass it by July the 4th, that gives us a chance to get it done in the House by the end of July.
In conference.
In conference.
Right. So then they'll hammer it out. Two very different plans. Senate Democrats are beside themselves. They said this is a top secret process. We're going to shut down government. Stop showing up to work, and we'll prevent you guys from prevent them from doing any work if this continues. What's your reaction to that?
You know, this bill was passed almost 6 years ago. I'm talking about Obamacare. So for the last 5, 6 years, we've known since Republicans have taken control of Congress that we wanted to repeal and replace Obamacare. We can now finally do it, that we've got the House, the Senate, and President Trump. So everybody knows what the score has been. We passed what we passed out of the House. The Senate's got it. Let's go ahead and let the Senate pass their bill by July the 4th, as Mitch McConnell said. Get it back so that we can vote on it. Get it done by the end of July.
Congressman Duncan Hunter was beside himself on Sunday. He said the Senate is letting us down. We're giving them tons of legislation, and it's just stopping there. You have passed 158 bills, and President Trump has signed 37 into law. Do you have the same frustration with the Senate?
You know, I think that's an excellent point, because you look at the numbers that you cited. So the House has passed more bills through June 20th. if you look at the same point of Obama, President Bush, President George H.W. Bush, President Clinton, more bills passed. President Trump has signed more bills into law at this point in time. So I think we have been very productive.
So you're saying hold on to August off for now, but if they cannot get the health care done, if you cannot get started at least on tax reform, you say we should probably stay, you guys should stick around in August. That means Democrats have to stay, too.
Yeah, I think we can be very productive in the month of July. We also have budget reconciliation. We've got to get the budget done.
And you're way behind on that.
So let's see what all we can get done in July. I think that we can be productive. But I bet if you talk to a number of my fellow members, both in the House and the Senate, they'd say if for some reason we can't get it done, then we'll stay some or part of August. But then, you know, you talk about August recess. And recess is we know
I know
what
you're going to be
recess
home
sounds
working
like.
hard.
Right. So if we're not in Washington, we're going to be back in our home districts, meeting with constituents and going to various
Lastly, what's
events.
online today in the Tom Price's seat in Georgia with Ossoff and Handel too close to call?
You know, it is very close. One thing to look at is in early voting, the Republican numbers have been up in early voting, especially as compared to the primary. So I think Karen Handel has a really good chance. We'll know more tonight, but I'm proud of the effort that she's put forth, the most expensive congressional race in history.
All right, Congressman, great to see you in person. Congressman David Kostoff, in studio from Tennessee. Great to see you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Coming up straight ahead, it was one of the biggest elections ever, and this morning we've learned millions of votes may have been illegal. And they're violent left-wing protesters terrorizing a college campus, forcing its graduation to move miles away. Should that be considered a terror group? We'll examine next.
Time now for your news by the numbers. First, 74%. That's Joe Biden's favorability rating, topping a list of potential Democratic presidential candidates for the 2020 election. This according to a Morning Consult Politico survey, which brings us to our next number, 5.7 million. That's how many illegal immigrants might have voted in the election that put Biden in the White House the first time. New data about the 2008 election just revealed in a Washington Times report. And finally, 43.5%. That is how much rates are increasing for the last Obamacare insurer in Iowa. Medica agreeing to offer policies statewide, but only with a steep hike. Steve?
Thanks, Ainsley. A college in Washington state under siege by left-wing protesters known as Antifa. Evergreen State College had to move its graduation away from its campus because of these protests. So the question is, should Antifa be considered a domestic terror group? The author of No Campus for White Men, The Transformation of Higher Education into Hateful Indoctrination, joins us right now. Scott Greer is also the deputy editor of the Daily Caller. Scott, good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Okay, so what happened up at this college?
Well, there's been a lot of controversy brewing over the last few months. There's a professor there who opposed a day that called for all white students and faculty to leave. It's called a day of absence. He thought it was a stupid idea, that it was actually just enforcing injustice and oppression rather than fighting injustice and oppression. Instead, that just set off a bunch of student protests where people were threatening professors, and this professor in particular, who was forced off campus, wasn't allowed to teach his usual course on campus because of threats towards him.
Okay.
Now, originally the left-wing students were just among themselves, but Antifa, which is short for anti-fascist, a lot of these groups that are really big on the West Coast, particularly in Washington and Oregon, have now gotten involved. And just last week there was a free speech rally on campus which was harassed and intimidated by Antifa protesters.
And of course, it got to the point where they had to move the graduation 30 miles away from campus, which is a sad commentary on what's going on. You just mentioned it all started with a confrontation with a professor. This is how the New York Times said. It started with the suggestion that white students and professors leave campus for a day, a twist on a tradition of black students voluntarily doing the same. A professor objected, and his argument with a loud and profane group of protesters outside his classroom soon rocketed across the internet. Since they're talking about it, we thought we'd show it to folks. Here it is.
This is not about you.
I'm talking.
This is all about him. On terms of white privilege. This is not a discussion. You have lost that one.
You said some racist.
Can you apologize?
I did not. Stop telling people of color the
useless. You're useless. Get the out
Our
of here.
history could pivot in the direction of the values that you are standing here for.
Yeah, resign.
What?
Resign.
Not resign.
Okay, so that's how it started, and then they teamed up with an anti-fascist group?
Well, Antifa have gotten in on this act on their own. They have harassed and intimidated people all throughout the West Coast at college, particularly at UC Berkeley. There's now basically no conservatives can speak there after the February riot when Milo Yiannopoulos spoke, and they had riots and beat up innocent people. Anti-fascists on their own have now gotten involved in this Evergreen State matter because of the national attention it has received. And they believe that there's violent racists afoot on this very left-wing campus, which is ridiculous.
So, Scott, should it be considered a domestic terror group, this Antifa?
By all accounts, it should be, because this is a group that use different terror tactics from ISIS and Islamic militant groups, but they instead of bombs and guns, they use bricks and bike locks to intimidate and harass and suppress civil liberties and to threaten their political opponents. This is a group that celebrates and legitimizes violence towards anyone they see as a fascist, which, as you can tell, they have a very broad definition of fascist if they're going to target a progressive professor.
All right. Scott Greer, Deputy Editor at Daily Caller. Scott, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. What do you think about that? Email us. Meanwhile, a stunning development in the case of the Obama administration spying on Team Trump. The evidence everybody wants to see got shipped off to the Obama Library, where we can't see it for 5 years. What do you think about that? And the polls are open in Georgia's 6th District, where Todd Pyro is talking with some of the voters in Sandy Springs, Georgia. Todd, good morning.
Steve, good morning to you, sir. Yes, we are serving up some waffles, we are serving up some pancakes, and we are talking to voters, like you said, in the Georgia 6th. Is this the referendum that the Democrats and the mainstream media say it is against the president if Karen Handel loses, or is it just another election with a whole lot of money poured into the Democrats and Jon Ossoff? We're going to answer those questions with these fine folks when Fox and Friends comes back.
Yeah, running down a dream that never would come to me. Working on a mystery.
Today's a big day, especially for the state of Georgia. The special election today between Republican Karen Handel and Democrat Jon Ossoff. And we have Todd Pyro down at a diner talking to some of the voters to find out who they're voting for and why. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning to you, Ainsley. Yes, exactly like you said, we're talking to people here in the Georgia 6. This is an election, which we've said multiple times, has seen the most amount of money poured into it, mostly from outside sources. I think the total is $50 million for this House of Representatives special election. That beats the most expensive House election by about $20 million. So we're talking to people about what they think about that. First, we're going to start off with Chris. Chris is a property manager. And Chris, what do you think about all this money that's pouring in?
Well, good morning. I believe that the Georgia voters can see clearly how to make up their mind and not have, outside influences tell them what to think or what to vote. You could put out all the signs you want and all the ads, but people in Georgia, I think, will make the right decision, and I'm for Karen Handel, so I've early voted, and I'm for her.
Now, you're one of 140,000 people who has voted early. Obviously, today is the actual election for people who are going to the polls. What do you think specifically, what happens if Karen Handel loses? Do you think that is going to be a referendum against the president?
It'll be a disappointment for the Republicans here in the state of Georgia. But the Trump administration, I think, will be able to clearly see their way forward with their plans for our future, which is the plan that I'm in favor of.
You did vote for Trump, like you told me off camera.
Yes, we went to the inauguration, and so we are 100% behind Donald Trump.
Quickly, before I get to your wife, what is the #1 thing you think the president has done best so far?
Wow, that's the best. I think is to focus on the military aspect of our country, and to
increase our standing in the world. Is really what
I think that's an area that I'm proud to be an American about.
We're all proud. We're proud of you. Thank you, sir, for
Okay,
your
thank
time. Now we're going to go to Jeannie.
Hi.
Great to see you. You're a big Fox and Friends fan.
Yes, I am.
You're also a physician. We're going to get to health care in a moment, but let's just talk about the Georgia 6. Who did you vote for?
Karen Handel. We voted early. We were shocked at the intensity of interest that we're seeing. This is a week ahead of the actual election that we voted, and we stood in a line for an hour and a half, and nobody was leaving that line. Everyone intensely wanted to be there to vote.
What do you think about all the money?
It's upsetting that so much of it has come from places like California. That makes me feel like some of the people who are giving the money think that the person who's going to be elected will support their agenda, their California agenda, as opposed to the Georgia agenda.
I'm going to ask you now, as a physician, you voted for President Trump.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on Obamacare, and do you think the president can get rid of it?
I think that they have to. Unfortunately, I think now the onus is on the Republicans to do something about it, even though it was a legislation that was passed completely on a partisan basis, as everybody knows. But the biggest problem about it, the biggest problem, is no matter what they say, there is not access to care. Temporarily, my husband and I was between positions, and I had to get health care. I had to buy health care, and we were paying over $2,000 a month for $6,000 deductibles each.
And that's as a physician?
As a physician. And so I saw that, and during that time I told my husband, we can't get sick. We cannot afford to get sick. So that's the situation so many people are in. If you are a person that's struggling, you know, to pay for fuel and for your kids' education and for the groceries on the table, and you have a tremendous amount of money that you have to pay for your premium, and then you have a deductible of $4,000, $6,000, $8,000, you don't have access to care, and that's very disturbing.
Jeannie, thank you. We're going to quickly go to your sister. I'm going to step out. I'm going to get cozy with my friend Kathy. Kathy, we're going to give you just only a little bit of time because you are not from the Georgia 6. You are from Florida, but you came up here today just for this special election. Why?
My sister called me and she said she had a ticket for me.
Okay,
so
understood.
I was happy to come up.
Tickets for election. I didn't know they did it here in Georgia. Now, specifically, as an outsider, seeing all the money that is coming in, what do you think of this?
Well, I was very interested to find out where the money was coming from, who the money was going to, because initially it sounded like it was all going to Ossoff. And as I've looked further, it looks like just as much money is going to Karen Handel. So that's very interesting.
And that could be borne out in the polls. It is a neck-and-neck race. That's why we're here. It's tight. We're hopefully going to get an answer today, but who knows? I mean, if it's really close, recounts and all the other stuff, don't want to put the cart before the horse there. Quickly, who did you vote for in the presidential election?
I voted for Donald Trump.
And why?
I've been for Donald Trump from the very beginning. From the time he came down the escalator, I was very impressed with the idea that he was going to fund his own campaign, and that he was wanting to build a wall, and that he was not going to be accepting money from outsiders, so therefore he would not be susceptible to all the lobbyists.
But in our discussion earlier, you said you can't stand the way that he's being treated in the media. Talk about that.
Exactly. I'm so concerned about the media because they're lying, and now lies have become legitimate sources of information, and that's very upsetting.
We want to thank you all for being here so early to be with us here on Fox and Friends. Obviously a big day here in the Georgia 6. We thank you for starting your day with us, and thank all of you out there for starting your day with us. We'll keep you posted, check back in with you. A huge day here in Georgia. Guys, back to you.
Todd, has everybody early voted? Have you found anybody who's still going to vote today?
Steve, that is an amazing question. 140,000 people have early voted. Every single person we've spoken to has early voted as well. That said, 210,000 people is sort of the average for a midterm. Yeah. So you have to think with an election that has so much attention on it, there are going to be people going to the polls today. But yeah, 140,000, everybody we spoke to has already voted.
All right. Todd Pyro live at Sandy Springs at the diner down in Georgia.
Waited an hour and a half in line, that lady said. Even though it wasn't the day of voting, it was early voting. I wonder how long the lines are today.
After all the commercials telling you to vote, 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 people were going to vote.
Yep.
Hey, Jillian.
Hey, guys, I was just thinking You know, they probably won't have many long lines today,
Yeah.
so if you want
I
to get out and
know.
vote in Georgia, it's probably a
Today's the day.
good day to do so. All right, let's get you caught up on what you need to know before you leave the house. The man accused of beating a 17-year-old girl to death in a road rage incident should have never been here to begin with. ICE telling the Daily Caller Darwin Torres is a citizen of El Salvador and in the U.S. illegally. Police in Virginia say he beat Nabra Hassanen, who is Muslim, with a metal bat after an argument, then dumped her body in a nearby lake. Authorities do not believe it was a hate crime. Key evidence on whether the Obama administration spied on the Trump team will be kept under lock and key for years. Judicial Watch says its request for Susan Rice's alleged unmasking documents was denied. The National Security Council dropping a bombshell, saying the documents were transferred to the Barack Obama Presidential Library in Chicago. The government watchdog group also told records are sealed for 5 years after an administration leaves office. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo once said conservatives aren't welcome in his state, but he's welcoming illegal immigrants with open arms. Cuomo writing an opinion article saying, quote, "In New York, we are reaffirming our commitment to protecting immigrants' rights. Each new effort by the federal government to ban our immigrant sisters and brothers will be met by a redoubling of our commitment to support and protect them." Back in 2014, Cuomo told a radio station, if they are extreme conservatives, they have no place in the state of New York because that's not who New Yorkers are. That's a look at your headlines, guys. I'll see you in a little bit.
Is he the king?
Apparently.
He's deciding who gets in and out
He
now?
thinks he's the king.
Yeah, fantastic.
Clearly,
That's great.
he's running for president.
And did you miss illegal in your copy, Jillian, or was it just not there? It's illegal immigrants, Mr. Governor. That's the problem, not immigrants.
Well, we're sitting in a sanctuary city, the biggest one in America, so not a problem for a lot of people.
Right.
All right, coming up on this Tuesday, another deadly terror attack rocking London, the third in just 3 months. Why our next guest says politicians deserve a portion of that blame.
And you may be wondering just how much we are going to win.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
And by the way, stocks are hitting record highs. And Charles Payne says wins could last for years. He's on deck. Yeah.
Winning.